This is the Asset Hero Property Management Podcast, episode 14. Today, I am going to be going over investment strategies and different styles of investment based off your goals. And, I'm going to kind of go through those based off my personal experiences and briefly touch on different types of investment styles. And then hopefully in future episodes, we can kind of dive deeper into each type of style, in a little bit more detail. So let's get started. So how I started, I'm not from a rich family or born with a silver spoon or anything like that. So I didn't have a lot of money at all, or actually I didn't have any. But my wife and I really wanted to start investing. So I started with what I could, and I just started working for a maintenance company that primarily did work for property management. So I figured that was a good place to start. I needed a job at the time too, so that kind of worked. So I, started doing this, just general handyman maintenance with, a guy that's been doing it for 30 years, and quickly found out, the needs of a tenant and how property managers reacted and assessed. So, we would always go to a property and the tenant said, "Oh, I put in a request for these 10 items, but our work order only had one." So, we would, we quickly found out how managers worked, and it threw me in the deep end of investments as a whole without actually owning any investments. So what I did, at the time I was renting an apartment. So my wife and I knew that, ironically, paying rent is just throwing money out the window as a renter, but we also wanted to be in that business of owning the property. So how do you do that, with no or little money? So I found the social platform BRRRR. So I'm still an active member of that today. And I started reading all of the books that they had available. There's actually one specifically, I don't know if this is the exact title, but it's, how to buy real estate with no or little money. So I read that book. It's a very small book. You don't need a lot of info, but it was very eye-opening. I mean, it had probably 20 different ways to buy real estate with zero money. So what we did is my wife and I decided to do what we call house hacking. And that's a term, actually, with a little bit of variety on that. But the house hacking term, this is a style of investment that's really good for beginners, is to purchase a piece of real estate that you live in and then rent out the other rooms or other units if you buy a multifamily to live there essentially rent-free or actually get paid there. So let's go into a little bit of detail what that means. So let's say you want to buy a duplex. You would then move into one side, live in and occupy one side, and then rent out the other. So in theory, if the numbers work, the rent that you would be collecting from the one side would pay for potentially even more, more than that, the mortgage on that property. So if you buy a property for $200,000 and your mortgage is $1,000 a month, and then you live in one side and the other side you rent for $1,200 a month, you now have a positive cash flow of $200 per month. So you're getting paid $200 a month to live there. So I just threw those numbers out, but that's the theory. And it works really well because you can actually purchase, when you move into a property that you purchase, you qualify for an FHA loan, which, the down payment requirements for that are extremely low, down to currently 3.5% of the purchase price. So, and then it helps with your approval rating, because if you're reaching out to a lender to get financing for this, you can say, I'm going to live in one side, so I only have to pay 3.5% down. And then the other side is going to collect $1,200 a month in rent. So that potential rental income will go towards your income now that you have, with your current job. to help get you approved for the loan of $200,000 or what have you. So the approval process is much easier because you have that potential future rental income to help you get approved for it. So, and you only need 3.5% down. Now that's no money. That's not no money, but it's very little, to buy an investment property. So my wife and I did something similar. We kind of did a little bit of variety to it. So at the time, by the time we were ready to jump in and purchase our first property, I had, and I graduated, I guess, but moved from property maintenance into the property management world. So I invested in myself first and got licensed, a real estate license, because you have to be a licensed realtor to be a property manager to manage third-party properties in Texas. So saved up and spent the money to get licensed and started working for a property management company. At that point, it really wasn't much of a pay raise. However, because I was mostly with this particular company, I was all mostly commission based. So the difficulty there with buying a property is if you just start a property or a job that's commission based, getting approved is significantly harder because it's inconsistent. So you have to show at least 2 years worth of income on a commission based job, to actually be qualified. So at the time we were ready to buy a property, but I couldn't qualify. So this was all on my wife because at the time she had a steady job. So we couldn't get approved for a lot. We were actually only approved for $80,000 based off her salary because they couldn't look at my income at all. So you can't buy a duplex for $80,000. I mean, you can, but it'll be, in a war zone. So we didn't really want to do that because we wanted to move in. So we purchased a small 2-bedroom condo, and it was livable. It was in a decent area, centrally located in the city, but it's a little bit dated. So we, she got qualified for it barely, but we paid 3.5% down, on $80,000. So didn't take very much, to save for that. And we moved in and we renovated that property ourselves and lived there for a year. And, throughout that year, we renovated it. And then at that point, we were ready to, buy another one. So now we say, we've been in this property. We can rent this property out for, $900 a month. And the mortgage on it's only $300, so that's a good sized profit in the bank. It's like, wow, okay, now you're going to have this additional income to help you purchase, another. So throughout that year, we saved. I mean, we ate ramen. We didn't buy anything that we'd have to. We didn't go out. We saved every penny we could so we could afford to then buy another property and move into it as well. So, another 3.5% down. So, moving into the property is what saved us, what has allowed us to buy those properties. Because typically, if you're an investor buying a property that you're not going to occupy, you need to put 20 to 25% down. So that's a significant amount of money that we rarely, that would take years, and I'm too impatient. So we didn't want to do that. So we moved into our first single family at that point. That was more of a turnkey property. So it was more recently built and didn't really need anything, had granite countertops and it was very nice. 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. But so that's exactly what we did. We got approved for another FHA because we were going to move into it. For 3.5% down, we bought that one for $140,000, right? It's just a little bit more step up from the 80. And then we rented out the condo. So now we had $800 a month in rent, with a $500 profit. And so we used that $500, that extra money that we had, and we put it into our savings in addition to what we were saving already. So we kept saving like we would. We were, living on bare bones and putting that cash away. So now it's like a snowball effect. Now you have $500 more a month to save. And this time we waited 1.5 years and we did it again. So now we had even more money saved, right? So So now we stepped it up. We moved into another single family, but this time it was a 4-bedroom. Still turnkey. I like the turnkey at the time option. I don't really want to, because from the condo it was a little bit more distressed and I had to put a lot of work into it, and it was a little much. It wasn't really my style, so I prefer to do turnkey, at least at the time. So I bought, this one. This third property was another single family, but a little bit bigger. And it was at the time 180,000, right? So I went from 80 to 140,000, now to 180. But the rent potential on the first single family, again, would give me about $400 to $500 in profit from the rent. So now I have the condo, and now I have the first single family, and that's $1,000 in profit every single month that I have. So it just gets easier to get approved for these loans at this time. So now I'm using the same loan officer that I've used since the beginning. So I've established a relationship with them, and they see what I'm doing, they see the trend that I'm doing. So it gets easier to get approved. But I did another 3.5% down on this third property. And then again, use the profits from the first 2 properties to save. And that at this point, I didn't even have to be in that property, the third property, even a year. I was there for 10 months because the $1,000 in profit I had from the 2 properties, in addition to what I normally would save. Again, we were living on fumes. We made our living expenses extremely low. It was only 10 months before I was ready to buy another one. So at this point, we were, getting tired of moving. So in our mind, we were thinking, let's buy something more suited to our needs. Because, at this point, we already had, my wife and I had twins already, and they were very young. So we were like, let's move somewhere more permanent, right? So we can let's buy one more and we'll move into it just like we've been doing. Let's buy another single family, but more of a family environment and settle there, right? For at least for a more longer term, not this year after year after year, because moving is getting harder, especially with children. So I settled, and we found a property, it's, older, built in the 80s. And at the look of it, it looked fine. It's just a little bit, dated, but not so dated that we needed to do any major work to it. So we bought that. But in order to do that, it was much higher in price because we wanted this to be more of a property that we settled at. I sold the condo and used the proceeds from that condo to help purchase this property. So that's what we did. So we bought this property. This one was, at the time, the biggest purchase of $240,000. But once we moved into it, so now I lost a rental, right? So I sold one. So now I only have 2 other single families. We quickly found out that this property was a lemon. One issue after another. I don't really want to get into specifics, but there were structural issues. There was foundation issues. It's just one thing after another, and we ended up living there for about 3 years, but I had to put forcibly about $200,000 into it. It's not really something I wanted to do. It's something we had to do. Granted, I still own that property because I'm so in the hole with it. I'm trying to make up money for it. But now it's like a brand new house because, we had to replace all the siding and the roof, and we had to fix some foundation and replace all the flooring. It was just a big old mess. And that story is for another podcast. I could do a podcast on its own episode on that property, my lemon. So I learned a lot from it. We actually did an inspection, professional inspection on this property, and none of the issues that we found were caught. So I use it as a learning experience. So now, really when it comes to investment strategy, before you kind of dive into it, you need to determine what kind of investor you want to be. Do you want to be a turnkey investor, or do you want to be a investor that buys like distressed properties and rehabs them and fixes them, sells them, or holds them? There's a lot of avenues, but you kind of have to, they're typically, categorized into one of those things, so turnkey, I don't really want to do anything with it. I just want to buy it. It's good. There's really no maintenance. It's newer. doesn't need very much, if anything at all. Or buy a distressed property that needs a whole lot of TLC, spend some money to then make a better return. So I've kind of dabbled into all of it, because I like just, mastering one technique and then moving on to the next. So at this point, during those 3 years of us living there, we obviously couldn't sell it because there were so many issues with it. So we had to fix them. But in my mind, and still to this day, if I'm going to have to put this much money into it, I want to make my money back at some point. So I haven't sold it. Currently, it's rented, but during the 3 years, I really, we started purchasing property. We're in a point where we could purchase property without actually moving into it. So, I really wanted to find a way to buy more property without any of my own money. And it's actually much simpler to do. So especially when we're at the position that I was at now. So now I'm in, I have 3 pieces of real estate and I've had them for a few years now. I've built equity in them because I've been paying down the mortgage. The appreciation of the property has gone up. And, we have good rental income on them. So I had quite a bit of equity built up. So one of the strategies is to use the equity from your current real estate to fund a down payment for you to then buy another piece of property. So that's the next property we did. So we found a 5-bedroom single family home, more student oriented. So again, I'm trying to diversify at this point, because we're in a college town. So I have a couple properties that are more family oriented. Now I want to switch over to student oriented properties. So a 5-bedroom, home that was built for students is what I found. It was vacant. So the sellers were a little bit more desperate, but I saw the potential for it. So I pulled equity from my first 2 properties that I have to fund the 20% down payment that I needed to purchase this property. So this one was a $245,000 property. I had enough equity to fund the down payment to then get the loan. So I literally bought that property with no money. That was my first no money purchase. So that was really cool. I quickly paid off that equity loan for that down payment, with the rent, the profits of the rent that I had, within 12 months. So now to this day, that property is my highest profitable property. I profit $1,000 a month on that thing. So because I saw the potential of what it could bring in rent and compared to my actual cash. So my cash on cash return is extremely high because I put no cash. I had no cash into it of my own. So then I really wanted to start expanding these, the no money. Like I'm still to this day, if I'm going to buy a piece of real estate, I'm going to put as little of my own money into it as possible. So I'm using other people's money, using another bank, to fund a down payment or, partnering with someone that would fund the down payment, right? So then, to me, it's worth it. If I partner with someone else who has the cash to put the money into a property, I make a deal with them saying, you fund the down payment and I will do all the legwork in terms of management and keeping it leased, until the end of time, essentially, or until we sell it. So they fund the down payment and I do all the legwork. In exchange, we own 50-50. So I don't own 100% of that property, but to me, that's worth it because I didn't put any of my own money into it. So I'd rather own half of something that I didn't spend any money on than 100% of something that I had to put 20-25% down. You can see what's happening now, the trend, as I take all of these profits now of all these properties and I don't put them in my own pocket. I reinvest that profit into more real estate. So I use those funds. I take that profit every single month and I put it into an account, and it sits there waiting to buy more property. But again, if I can figure out a way to buy property without any of my own money, that stockpile of cash just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So then I can use that for renovations or whatever it is I need to do to the properties themselves. I've tried owner financing. Owner financing is a little bit different. I don't know if I'm a fan of it, but I have experienced owner financing. I found a piece of commercial property that the owners couldn't couldn't sell just because of the current market at the time, but I needed it. So, I owner financed that. After 3 years, I refinanced it to pay them off. Owner financing is typically a higher interest rate, but you don't necessarily have to go through the approval ratings of a standard mortgage company. So it's much easier to get approved. It's just more of a handshake type of thing, so that you make legal. So that's been interesting. I've done that. I've only done that one once. And then we also have a BRRRR investment strategy. So that's stands for, buy, rehab, refinance, or rent. I'm sorry, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, right? So you buy a distressed property, very distressed, and you renovate the property, then you rent it. This strategy involves you holding the property, but then you refinance it because you typically would buy that distressed property in cash to get your money back that you've invested into it. So in theory, you could buy a property for $0. You just have to have the cash to front it to then get it back. So I have done this and it works. You just have to be careful in the type of property you purchase. So I bought a single family, 3-bedroom, 1-bath house for $40,000. Very distressed, not livable. So, but the owner just wanted to get rid of it. So with me stockpiling cash from these profits over the course of the years, I had $40,000. So I used it and bought it in cash. And then I put $30,000 into it. I added a bathroom, made it a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, tore down a couple of walls, redid the flooring, painted the outside. It looked like a brand new house when it was done. So now I'm in it for $70,000. And then I turned around and rented it for $1,000 a month. So once it was rented, I then went to a bank, showed them the rental amount that I have, and refinanced it. So they reappraised it. And it was now worth $100,000. And I've only put $70,000 into it. So I pulled out all the equity I could, which is 75% of the total equity. And I made my money back plus some. So I actually got paid for that property to purchase it. So you just have to have the cash up front to do that. Now, currently, I'm kind of I've dabbled into a little bit more, small multifamily and renovations of those. That's a long learning curve as well. So I've spent too much money on renovations before several times because I think I'm just going to spend $10,000 on this renovation. But then I go in there, I'm like, I want to do this, I want to do this and do this and do this. It's very easy to lose your cash there. So, keep sticking to a budget and not letting your emotions drive you on that. Stick to the numbers. What's going to work? What's going to get this property rented at a higher rate? Not necessarily what I would prefer. That's very, very critical. So anyway, that's where I'm at in my career. Now I'm at about 30 properties, 30 units as of today. And this year I bought $1 million piece of property, and that was a big chunk. So, and believe it or not, I didn't put any of my own money on that one. So I financed it all. So that one was a little bit more of I used a partner to help fund some of the down payment. And then the rest of it, I financed through a third party, company that I've established not a bank, but it's it's like a virtual lending company that I've gotten an established relationship with for renovations. So they funded the remaining portion of the down payment that I needed to purchase this $1 million property. So I had to put 20% down or 25% down on it. So none of that was with my own money. And now I have a mortgage, and now it's rented and it's cash flowing. So works really well. And this particular property has an additional half-acre lot that I can future develop if I wish, or sell, or do whatever I want with. So it was a cool deal. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. That's kind of, I wanted to give a breakdown of different type of investment styles, and kind of, for those of you who are watching or listening, it is possible. You don't have to have money to or a lot of it to get started. So if you literally don't have any money and saving is just not something that you can do, there are still things, or at least do in a timely fashion, something in a relatively short amount of time. Partner with somebody, right? Reach out to someone who has investment experience or has the cash that just doesn't want to deal with it, that just wants to make a return. You can even reach out to someone, a private lender, a family member or someone, say, hey, listen, if they don't want to be part of the real estate transaction, say, why don't you lend me the money to buy this property, and then I will pay you back in 12 months or 24 months with interest, right? So they make some money, but they're not an owner of that property. There's so many ways you can do this without spending your own money. I've even bought a property with credit cards before. So I've only done that once, but it's possible, using someone else's money to buy the real estate that you need. So whether that be a person or a company or a credit card, there's so many books. I urge you to read the books first before you just jump in, but also don't get caught into your analysis paralysis either. So don't just always look and research and never do anything, So figure out a plan, stick to it, and execute it. So, but if you do have any other questions, just feel free to reach out to us anytime. I'm here to help you with your journey, as well as, help, get you started. So, but yeah, I think I'll end it here on this podcast. So we'll talk to you guys later.